What did you find coming out of Behringer?
Well, this one was pretty awesome because we had just talked about a couple of very high-priced, I guess we could call them luxury synths that were 6 voices of analog synth goodness, and they did sound great or do sound great. But Behringer just put out the Pro-800, which is a clone of the Prophet 800, and it's 8-voice analog polysynth, $600.
Oh, that's not bad at all, that is
Yeah,
it?
now, you know, it's Behringer, it's a clone, it's all that stuff. We're not here to debate the merits of those awesome Oberheims and sequential synths. I love them. I just saw this and was like, well, here's something we can talk about that's like, hey, you know, this is pretty cheap for what it's offering. 8 voices of polyphony, 2 VCOs per voice, up to 400 presets, full MIDI CC control, USB MIDI connectivity, dual polyphonic sequencer, dedicated LFO with 6 wave shapes, and a VCA overdrive.
$599 shipping in April 2023. Yeah, so I'm just stealing what we got off the docket. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was reading off of. Don't you worry.
So, like, I mean, that's an insane amount for very little, which Behringer are obviously kind of famous for. They make their clones, and sometimes they're a bit dodgy. We were talking on air. We've both had Behringer mixes before, which have died on us. But the synthesizers, despite the whole cloning thing, seem to be all right. Now, 600 quid for 8-voice polyphony? Oh, do you want to hear some sounds? That's very nice.
I want one.
Hey, it's brilliant. I mean, we've just spent the last 3 weeks looking at high-end stuff, and suddenly, yeah.
It's cool to see an option like this come up for a polyphonic synth. I mean, there's the mini log, which I love and will always sing the praises of. But it's 4 voices, and like we've always talked about, oh, you know, like I even said last episode that 8 voices is what I need in a synth. You know, when it comes to a hardware synth that's like the Prophet 8, that's what I want. Yeah. And then it's like, here's the Pro 800. It's 8 voices, $600. I was like, oh man, like, don't do this to me. And the way to my heart is lush analog pads with just a little glide on it, and that sound demo was like right there. I was like, oh man.
It's not. I mean, there's what? Okay, so, there's not much you can say against it for so much for so little. Especially like you say, we've been looking at $5 grand synths, $3 grand synths, you know, that kind of thing, where that's in a whole different bracket. Behringer coming in here and it just opens up so many gateways for the producer, because there's just such a low barrier to entry. You don't have to. You can really get and learn from it as well. Not just like. It's a easy access because it's like $600, like you say, and you can learn from it, and you can grow, and you can twist these knobs and turn these filter notches and stuff like that, and then absolutely learn your craft. It's wonderful what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when we were talking a couple weeks ago about one of these more higher end synths, is that a lot of those synth companies don't make like a lower end alternative, and they don't need to, but there's a market for it. Just this low barrier of entry for 8-voice analog synth is something I think is awesome, and that should be commended in that way. Over in the chat, Tate Williams said, I'm big on synths. And Survey Channel says, would not mind one of those to replace my Pro 1. Yeah, I remember you had that, and I was still thinking about getting one of those. And then I saw the Pro 800 and was like, ooh, polyphony, 8-voice poly. I do have a question for the chat, though. Is a lower price point something that might persuade some of you to get into hardware or getting a hardware poly synth? Because I know we have a few people like Hydrofighter who's not the biggest fan of external hardware gear, and I'm just curious if something like this that offers a lot for the price, is that something that would persuade you in that way?
Yeah, it'd be nice to see. I mean, we both love our hardware. There's always room to buy more hardware as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
whether the wallet agrees is a different story, but there is always room, yeah. And this one doesn't take up much space because it's desktop. No. So hey.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure even Eon Lake, who's filled to the rafters right now, could find a little corner on his desk.
Oh, somewhere. I bet he already pre-ordered it.
Does the Behringer Pro speak to you? Does that kind of $600 price bracket, is that something you'd be interested in? Let us know either in the chat or later on in the comments if you're watching back, or if you're on Spotify, which is where you can also grab our broadcast now on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. We can put a question there as well. Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah, we've got edited video podcasts over on Spotify because they now allow video, and then the edited audio is also up on Apple Podcasts and every other podcast platform. So wherever you listen, if you listen, you can tune in there if you want to check it out. And over in the chat, Tate Williams said absolutely about whether the low price would be a reason to grab it. He said, frugal friend over here.
With you there.
Right there with you.
Very much so. Give us everything for nothing. And now, give it to us now. Very much.